Hi Gemini, welcome to your August 2019 Astro Update. It's Rena here. Well, August is a significant month, and for all of us, we can look forward to Jupiter going direct and having the end of the Mercury retrograde. Actually, that's happening on the 31st of July, but it's going to be more of a green light type of month. However, for you, it's especially significant because the month starts out with 4 planets all in Leo, and that happens to be your third house. The third house is the house that you rule. So whenever you have planets in the house that you rule, it becomes that much more important or potent. So starting from the very first day, we have the sun, moon. The new moon is still kind of had just become exact. Venus, Mars in that third house. The third house can be teaching and learning, communication in general, and family members such as brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles and cousins. I do think that for some of you, this is going to be a month of dealing with family matters, because then the energy moves to the 4th house, and then you're dealing with mother, you're dealing with the family of origin in general, the past, childhood, housing issues. So there could be something going on with family in August for you. But the 3rd house is also the local area. And so, for instance, if you have been meaning to move, or you have moved, you may be exploring your new town. You may be if you're researching for a place you want to move to, you may be doing that as well. But the new moon is here at the beginning of the month, so it's possible that you have moved. On the 11th, Jupiter turns direct in Sagittarius, and this is your opposite sign, so it's the opposite house. This is the 7th house of committed partnership. And, Jupiter in the 7th as a transit, because I actually had this myself. My rising sign is a late degree of Taurus, so some of these transits kind of dovetail with Gemini, although I've already been there, done that. I can't really say anything specific that I noticed during that time. And for some people, this may be something to do with, maybe because I'm in a committed relationship. If you're somebody who is looking for a permanent partner, this may be a good transit, and may be lucky in certain ways for you, where you find a person maybe in a very unexpected way, who knows, but that's really your better half. Jupiter in the 7th can give a philosophical attitude when it was retrograde. And when it goes direct, this can increase your one-on-one relationships. And the number one way I can see this happening is through clients. If you work for yourself, for instance, where you may widen that net. And if you have any kind of a court case going on, this could indicate that you receive some kind of financial payout. Now, it doesn't have to be in August. Jupiter will be in this sector for several more months, actually until early December. So you can expect to have a favorable outcome to something like that. And, you may have thought in that particular scenario that something was lost, that maybe you weren't going to have a favorable outcome, and now you find out that everything is going your way. So I think just in general, having Jupiter go direct should be good for things flowing better. And this could also include with if you're in a committed relationship too, because you may be expanding as a couple. You may be, and this could also be for like committing to somebody. Maybe you're planning a wedding or something where you are taking that relationship even further, or maybe even having a recommitment ceremony. Again, it doesn't have to be in August, but I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the retrograde versus the direct on August 11th. August 11th is seeing 3 particular transits that are kind of more significant. I don't cover the very short-term transits unless they're just like, new moons or full moons. I don't cover like, aspects from one sign to the other because they tend to be short-lived and therefore not very significant. Uranus, on the same day, Uranus goes retrograde, and this for you is the 12th house. I'm curious how many Gemini people have experienced strange psychic, or what would we call it, like spiritual experiences. Maybe you have noticed, especially since March, that you have had very unusual dreams that have been synchronistic and have enhanced your psychic abilities or just other awakening symptoms. The 12th house is the spiritual house, and so it can relate to spiritual matters. And when Uranus is there, there can be like spontaneous types of occurrences, maybe very unusual, but very unexpected. Uranus is surprising. And it could even be like a sudden thing. So I always think of the Kundalini awakening. And the other thing, too, is that Uranus rules the nervous system. So in the 12th house, to me, that's also like the extrasensory, because it's coming from a higher octave. So when Uranus goes retrograde, this can be like less controlled. One thing that I notice that people sometimes want to have these mystical experiences, and from everything that I have read, that we are not supposed to try to induce them. In other words, do certain practices that, speed up the process. And I really think that there's some merit to those concerns, because there have been people who try to artificially or prematurely raise their Kundalini, which basically just means the awakening energy. And it's not happening organically, so it kind of like blows a fuse, a psychic fuse, if you will. I mean, if you think about like people who take psychedelic drugs, yeah, some people emerge unscathed, but some people, they are permanently altered because it blew a fuse and they become really out there. And so, I mean, I personally wouldn't want to force things. And when you have Uranus in the 12th house, especially retrograde, be careful. You may even have a desire to experience new states of consciousness, but you can do that in a very measured kind of way. You know what I mean? So, I'm just kind of giving you my interpretation. It doesn't mean that I'm correct about that, but that's the first thing that I thought of. And so what else is happening? And that, there's one more thing on that same day. Mercury goes back into Leo. So that's your ruler. Mercury went retrograde when was that? It's sometime in July, I think July 7th. And it went direct on the 31st. And then, it was in Cancer when it went direct. It was in the sign before Leo. So it took time to get back to Leo. So it's coming back to that third house. So something that you have been considering is resolved and is fully maybe thought out in your head. Now, if you had any thoughts of, working online, doing something regarding social media, and you're trying to crunch the numbers, you may have figured out whether or not it's worth your while. That could be one possibility. This may have to do, too, with even with us relatives and money, because the second house has to do with money. It's supposed to be earned income, but I try not to attach too much specific details to it, because in my own life, I've experienced a second house transit with Jupiter there, where I didn't earn that money, but I got extra money that seemed significant to me. So I just want to make you aware of this, because there may be something that gets settled around the 11th or shortly thereafter, because Mercury was 4 degrees when it retrograded. So maybe, the middle of August is a likelier scenario. And that whatever this is goes back to, early July. And also, this could be like something that was like a falling out with a sibling that had to do with a misunderstanding of some sort. On the 15th, we have a full moon at 22 degrees of Aquarius. This is the 9th house. And full moons bring things to the highest point. We call that culmination. It could be like an ending, but it could also be like a personal best of sorts. So in the 9th house, this could be like a graduation, maybe from college, or if you are, let's say you're a professor. I'm sure that there are a fair number of Gemini professors out there. You may be retiring and getting a nice, hopefully getting a nice retirement party. This can be like completing a book. Maybe you've been writing a book and you're ready to publish. You've done all you can do. Maybe you're editing during the Mercury retrograde. Who knows? But this is what's happening mid-month. It's also, it could bring up something on a more internalized level, where you realize something philosophical about your life. And who knows what that might entail. It might be different for each Gemini, but there you go. Gemini, it's interesting that Gemini rules that opposite house, the 3rd house, which is more mundane knowledge, which to me is knowledge is concrete information. The 9th house is abstract knowledge. So that's what philosophy is, in a sense, or the spiritual experience that we can kind of verbalize. I would say the 12th house is the spiritual experiences that we can't verbalize, that we can't intellectualize. But, given this dichotomy, some Gemini people may live their lives for a long time kind of comfortable in that concrete knowledge, and then they hit a roadblock where all of a sudden it's not enough. And again, tying in Uranus in the 12th house, it could have something to do with that, where you have these unexplained experiences. You may be very interested in rational approach to everything. Just like when I debate those scientists or whoever on YouTube, and they're like, show me the proof. And it's like, they don't understand that if you are dwelling in the third dimension, that it's ultimately limiting. If you need that kind of proof through gross matter, and you may have kind of realized that in your own way, that your mind can't solve all your problems. Your intellect only goes so far. Especially since Uranus is so unusual and can come out of nowhere and kind of zap you with something. And you might say, there is no way that I can, explain that one away. There's just no way. Like, let's say you see a UFO or something. And to me, if I saw a UFO, that would be a spiritual experience. I just had a kind of a blast from the past, a memory. Back in the 70s when I was a little kid, I remember this one couple. They made this big deal out of this couple that, I don't know if they got abducted by aliens, but I remember when I was just totally fascinated by their story. And it kind of triggered something within me. So I always wonder, did I ever see aliens? Who knows? But to me, that would be a spiritual experience. At least it's like not of this world. We can say that. So, so that's happening. And on the 18th, Mars goes into Virgo. And this begins these Virgo energies, one after the other, in the 4th house of home and family and mother. And real estate. Well, that's home, but, sometimes I think of home almost psychologically. But yeah, I mean, literally. I think Geminis will get a kick out of this when I think of the word literally. How millennials say that like every other word. Literally. So Mars goes into Virgo, and this is 4th house. Mars is aggressive. 4th house is supposed to be your nest. Unless you are renovating your nest and you have bulldozers or whatever things that are like kind of vigorous. Mars is a very vigorous energy. So that's a possibility. It can be like some kind of conflict, sometimes with the mother. Maybe there's some family squabbles. Mars has been in that 3rd house. You may have been having at it with a sibling. Be careful about other people who are trying to triangulate, who may have their own agendas, and they're trying to suck you into their arguments, because you can stay above the fray. You don't have to fall for it, in other words. But, there's a certain activity level. Let's put it that way. It doesn't have to be bad. It could just be that you're more active in the home for some reason. On the 21st, Venus goes into Virgo in that 4th house. Venus can be harmony. It can be money. So if you are moving or selling a home, maybe you've been, maybe you're like preparing a home, and Venus can be the decorating part of it, and Mars is more of the construction work. And so that can be, tear downs, or, tearing down a wall or something, but then painting it, something along those lines, and making it nice so you can sell it, or just to live in it yourself. On the 23rd, the sun goes into that 4th house in Virgo, and this makes you more about business. I'm talking about because of the sign of Virgo, like, work-oriented, more detailed. But in the 4th house, you may be trying to get everything in order for some reason, organizing your house. And, especially if you are planning to sell, you may be noticing all the little details that need taken care of before you can put it on the market. On the 29th, Mercury goes into that fourth house too. So what do we have? A lot of energy in that fourth. And Mercury can be contracts. It can be communication, maybe with a real estate agent, with your mother, who knows, something that's fourth house. On the 30th, a new moon at 6 degrees of Virgo in that fourth. So new beginnings with home matters, real estate matters, matters with your mother. Maybe you're communicating again with your mother if you had some kind of a conflict and you're talking again. But whatever's happening, there is a lot of domestic emphasis. For Gemini, this may not be your cup of tea. You may be more interested in being out of the home than in it. Gemini as a sign is not a domestic sign. But before you write to me and tell me that you are, make sure that you look at your moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. You may have, especially with the Venus and Mars, they could easily be in Cancer or in Taurus, but Cancer rules that fourth house, and that could be you could be much more of a homebody than the typical Gemini. And the moon, of course, can be any sign, and including Cancer. Okay, that's what I have for you, Gemini. I hope you enjoyed this. If you would like a personal reading, like a natal chart interpretation or the astrological trends for the coming year, or love reading, career reading, whatever, check me out. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com, and the link is below to that site. Take care. Bye.